Hello all, James here. Now, John Cena is doing media rounds like crazy at the moment to plug his final match, his retirement match, now known to be with Gunther, which will be, I was going to say the main event. I mean, it is the main event in the sense, but I think it might be going on first. Just as I said that, I remembered something where it said he might be going on first, just like the original Saturday night's main events from the 80s, where they'd always randomly have the main event on either first or second. But anyway, that's on December 13th, and it's looking like all this publicity is doing something for ticket sales as well. I did a video not too long ago about how many seats were still available, and there are a lot of seats still available, but they're nearly all through verified resale now. And the last time, I cannot remember what the prices were when we looked at these together, you and I don't know, a few weeks ago or a month ago, whenever it was, but it was pretty stunning how many seats were still available. Once again, these are all the purpley pink ones are now verified resale. There's very few blue, which are still available, and they all seem to be on the floor. And I think they're cheaper than they were because this is fourth row, and seats are now 1,230. So if somebody fancies doing some cross-checking with what the prices were beforehand, then please let me know in the comments. But I think they've lowered down, so that's second row, and a lot of them are 2,300 or so. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty much what they are now. So anyway, the get-in price now, and once again, this is through verified resale, is, you can't see it there, unfortunately, because my stupid head's in the way. One sec, actually. There we go. 322 now, which was down from nearly $500 get-in price originally. But anyway, everyone from Joe Rogan to people I've never heard of have had John Cena on as an interview guest in the last couple of weeks. And now it was time for WWE's own spin on the in-depth interview. Now, they brought in a guy from Fox that I have to research because I don't know these things, Tom Rinaldi, who seemed quite astute, quite good at interviewing, asked some very sort of probing questions, more than most would do, and it seemed to suit John Cena's philosophical style, I guess, because he seems to really enjoy these types of questions and really going in depth if he's willing to answer them, of course. And he's not Tony Khan by any stretch of the imagination, but there were a couple of things he refused to answer. One of them was, something to do with faults or a slight or something like that he wanted to keep personal, and Tom was like, yep, that's fine, we'll move on. Which is actually, good interview. Why bother probing? Because you'll just ruin the rest of the interview in that sense. Now, the interview was streamed around 6 hours ago. As I record this, by the time it's published, it'll be about 7 hours or so. But this interview ended up being more like a James Lipton inside the actor's studio kind of affair, with, once again, a lot of introspection and, of course, a couple of the usual John Cena stories we've heard from before. But I started watching this thinking, there was a news article based on something he said, and it was about him re-signing with WWE that I'll get to later. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll watch it, see if there was anything else that was said that's worth writing up. And then really, I actually kind of really enjoyed the interview, and I wasn't expecting it to. I thought, well, it's a WWE production, is it just going to be the usual fluff and whatnot? It would be if Michael Cole was doing it. But no, it was definitely worth a watch. So I'm going to do a sort of quicker recap. I know I don't do the quickest videos in the world, and a couple of comments on some of the more revealing answers that John Cena gave that I wanted to bring to attention to. So anyway, the link is in the description. I do recommend you watch it after my video if possible, but you might as well just watch it yourself, really. But also, if you don't click the link, it's not hard to find. Just John Cena WWE interview will do just fine. Anyway, once again, this is a very fairly serious interview, which makes it weird. Someone wrote in the comments, and it was kind of perfect, like, he sits down to these, really important, not really important, but really serious, studious fake light in the back, fake fire in the background thing, and he turns up dressed like a Crayola crayon. I mean, he was in full-on Fruity Pebbles mode here while talking about, life and death and his career and his legacy and 25 years going in the blink of an eye, while dressed pretty much in pure primary colours. But anyway, Be that as it may, Cena may have been dressed like he was about to go meet his mates at the park for a game of football. But let's get to the interview itself. Rinaldi asks Cena the difference between the on-screen persona of John Cena and then the person. And Cena gives a very good interview, and something weirdly I can appreciate, because I guess, people will watch me on these things, and I know it's not about me. I'm just trying to throw a bit out there. And then we'll sort of think they know the person on screen or the person that they listen to fairly regularly. But Cena was very sort of resolute in his opinion that says, yes, Cena will be defined by his actions on screen, but nobody watching him on television has any real idea what the person is like behind the Crayola primary coloured t-shirts, of course, which is a fascinating way of looking at it, especially in wrestling, because pro wrestling, and there's two levels to this, and if you're like called the Dominator or something, that's one thing. You're a masked man and you go out, do your moves and leave. When you're using your own name, which John Cena is his real name, of course, it must be even harder to split the on-screen persona to the off-screen persona, or just a genuine person, especially once again you're using the real name. You've been on TV for so long, and it's pro wrestling, and it's harder to split off or separate the performer from the person compared to, like, let's say, a regular actor, for example. A few more things that were touched on: defining what success is and what John Cena considers failures in life. He doesn't have a good answer to give people as to why he resonated with the fans more than other wrestlers, why only his own and his wife's approval matters. Now, this is the one thing that I didn't have quite time for. At some point during the interview, he talks about, I guess, learning experiences and stuff he wished he did differently, but also trying to be a good role model. Now, I've already written a script that's going to be in Listmania, I guess, in a few weeks' time, of all the people who said that John Cena had screwed them over in some way, or beat them when they shouldn't have beat them, or they just didn't get along personally for whatever reason. And that goes from your Alex Rileys or your Wade Barretts or whoever it might be on down, I guess. But there was an awful lot of people that I found during my research writing that script, that format, that said that the John Cena of the late 2000s to the early 2010s was really difficult to work with, was really self-serving in a lot of ways. The Wade Barrett story is very famous, but that's a real quintessential example, I guess. And just the way that, the John Cena of 2025, at least on screen, once again, people don't know the real him, only a select few, is completely different from the stories I've heard personally, firsthand or secondhand or whatever it might be, from people, and also stories that wrestlers have given over the years as well about John in that time frame of the late 2000s, early 2010s, as somebody who really wanted to hold on to their spot, who at times could be selfish, at times was doing stuff that was really, I guess, sophomoric as well, as far as behaviour in the back, which wouldn't paint him in a good light. And once again, that John Cena, and then the John Cena from, I don't know if it's maybe 2013, 2014, 2015 onwards, he almost has like the personality trajectory, as far as I can guess, of a Randy Orton. Because at some point, Randy Orton went from, I don't know, putting baby oil in people's bags and then rubbing his gentleman's sausage before shaking hands with new people, and then throwing a fake tantrum when they wouldn't shake his hand, which has his shaft juice all over it or whatever, and then he turns up being like a really, really serious person, like overly serious, like does a complete 180. I've asked people for stories about Randy, and they just said, I can't even tell you the stories because they're so bad. And then in the mid-2010s, late 2010s onwards, it's like a super serious, super professional guy, and I'm wondering if Cena's like a less extreme version of that as well. But I thought it was interesting, that portion. He wants, again, this another bit where he said that he wanted to fit in school. They're talking about the school days quite a while and going to these like military-style camps, I guess, where he received education at one point. And basically he said something he wished he hadn't said to try and fit in with the cool kids, and then immediately regretted it and called it a learning lesson. Now, once again, the learning lessons themes will appear throughout the interview as well. Now, a few points I won't get into: why he didn't join the military and why he got into wrestling. Then he why he travelled all the way to Los Angeles to, I guess, chase bodybuilding and then eventually chase his dream of becoming a wrestler when there was a school 25 minutes up the road run by Killer Kowalski and his wig that, trained Triple H, China, Perry Saturn, most famously. And he just had no idea it was right there practically on his doorstep, and he ended up moving across the country. Stephanie McMahon, the kind of taking credit, or more credit than maybe she should do, for the John Cena rap character going on television, which once again Cena says, because Tom Rinaldi says, oh, well, Stephanie McMahon says the story, and Cena's well, we all tell our own story, and basically said that Stephanie's version wasn't true. Or basically she was inserting herself a bit too much into Cena's success story, or the story of him not getting fired when he was on the bubble. Now, they play the rhyme Cena gave, because they've got a bit of B-roll as well, to so this is the rhyme that Cena gives Stephanie McMahon backstage in the Halloween episode in 2002. It's the first tiny bit of the hip-hop John Cena character that sort of debuted. And the rhyme he says to Stephanie is, "The old man's got a plan, he's chilling in the building. Did I tell you I'm like light beer? I taste great and I'm less filling." It's like, dude, I would never go up to a girl and say, hey, listen, I'm less filling than other guys. You know what I mean? I don't think he thought that one through too much. Anyway, John Cena, once again, was on the bubble, on the cusp of being fired in late 2002, and he found that liberating. And I actually like the thought process here, because he said throughout, the booties and shorts era of John Cena, the Ruthless Aggression debut with Kurt Angle and beyond, up to that Halloween episode, where he was plain Jane Superbrain the entire way through, doing what he was told, being quiet, keeping his ears open. Once again, it's great advice, but not taking any chances. And straight away, it went from a good debut to not resonating with the fans whatsoever, because there's not, apart from a good body, there's nothing really to latch onto, I guess. And then, once again, on a European tour, which is the only time that the guys all travelled together on the buses, was they were all doing freestyle raps, and then John Cena butts in, takes a chance, does a 4-minute freestyle rap. Stephanie overhears it and says, "Man, should we put that on television?" Now, the interesting thing here is that I must have known at the time, but once again, it's over 20 years ago, is Cena kind of weirdly had, at the beginning at least, a similar career trajectory in WWE as Stevie Richards and Raven. And I'll explain something, because they have got something really, really in common. And they both happened at the same year as well. After the hip-hop character was made official with John Cena, he ended up on SmackDown's B show at the time, Velocity. Now, the A show's accompaniment, they were filled, just in case you don't know. Velocity was SmackDown's B show, Heat was Raw's B show, and they would be taped before SmackDown to warm up the crowd and basically be filler content to fulfill contractual obligations to put something out there on Spike or USA Network or wherever it might have been at that time for an hour, and nothing of any actual consequence happened. Now, Cena, as well as Raven and Stevie, on the Raw side, on the Heat side, looked at this as an opportunity to make it their show and not look at it as a demotion. Well, you're still getting TV time, and guess what? With the B shows, Stevie would become Stevie Night Heat. Raven told creative he would rather be on Heat permanently than be an afterthought on Raw, rather be a big fish in a small pond, and that there was also more creative freedom and less interference from the higher-ups from there as well. So from there, he honed his character. This is Cena. All three of them did, I guess. And then he got elevated back up to SmackDown, which was, I guess, more lucky than Steve. Well, I guess Raven would leave, I think, pretty much at the end of the year. Stevie would do double duty on Raw and Heat with the Victoria thing, so he was all over the shows in 2002 and 2003. Now, a few more points we won't get into. The discussion of how 25 years went by so quickly, rapidly shrinking attention spans, and why Cena has endured over the decades. Why Cena is retiring is basically he feels he isn't good enough anymore because of his age and injury. And I will actually go into that a tiny bit more, because he more broadly talked about it on other interviews, where he said, well, not even interviews, actually. I think it was a backstage thing, where it was a throwaway line where he was doing photos with people like that, doing the "you can't see me" pose, and he said, "You have no idea how even this hurts me." So for people, I guess, who may still be wondering, well, why are you retiring now? You're still on the top of your game. As far as booking goes, I guess, you're a world champion, you get great reactions, etc. You're selling out arenas when you're on the card. And I think the reason is, if nothing else, one, he's very much a step slower than he used to be, which is, of course, obvious to longer-time fans. And two, he is apparently in so much pain that walking is a problem. Holding his hand up like that is a problem. And pretty much, he was either going to do a retirement tour or just announce he was retiring at the end of the year. And it was pretty much black and white like that. So he pitched to creative in 2024, I suppose, a 2025 retirement run where he actually said he wanted to do 200 dates. He offered to do 200 dates. And when he said that, the people in WWE looked at him like he had a smoking turd on his head and said, well, that's nuts. So WWE came back with the volley of like 36 dates or somewhere in the 40s, I don't know, somewhere around there. They said 36 dates. My mind, I thought it was in the low 40s, but whatever it was around that number, which made Cena very happy because then he could also take on other commitments, filming, whatever it might be. Now, Tom Rinaldi is discussing the idea of what retirement will feel like to John after it's all said and done, and whether he will miss anything and what will basically be the hardest part of stopping cold dead in its tracks wrestling after doing it for 25 years or maybe slightly longer with training in California. Now, Cena says he's absolutely content with not wrestling anymore, hurtling towards 50. But then Rinaldi actually mentions a very interesting thing, and it gives an interesting answer, is that he says high-end athletes, performers, etc., when they can no longer go, die twice. Because once when their careers are over, and once with the rest of us. Now, Cena agreed that something like that might indeed happen if the creative type or the athlete or whatever performer's career is the totality of their personality or reason for being. And John says that while he loves wrestling, his life doesn't revolve around relying on wrestling to provide him happiness. And once again, it goes further on, that he's more multifaceted, I guess, than people would give him credit for, or people will realise, considering they only see the on-screen performer. Now, quote, never is a big word. Now, Cena then confirms he will not be wrestling in a WWE ring again. And also at one point he says, I will not be getting physical in a WWE ring again. So that maybe means that he's never going to even take a punch, or maybe he will one day, or may never take a bump. But he actually used that line, he was not ever going to get physical. He won't be doing physicality in wrestling again. But he did add, and this is one of the big points of the big reveals of the interview, that he signed a 5-year contract with WWE or TK or whatever it might be as a brand ambassador. So for whatever that entails, I'm sure public appearances, maybe once again he might be doing monologues to kick off the beginning of shows. Who knows what it could be. But he is once again signed with WWE not too long ago for a 5-year contract extension that will not entail wrestling, but probably, I guess, at some point will be on the wrestling shows and making, high-profile appearances as well. Now, he was asked about the heel turn because how can you not ask about it? Because it started off so great and it ended up so bad in the end. Now, he said that he won't talk about it. Now, he's talked about it a tiny bit before in other interviews and basically put it all on himself as to why it failed. And for the most part, it wasn't John Cena's fault whatsoever. Now, the reason why he decided not to talk about the heel turn was, he said, well, we're mid-season here. The game's not finished. The season hasn't finished. Once the season is finished, then I will talk about it. And then he made a promise, however empty it might be, I guess, because you do an interview with 1,000 different people, that he will, once again, allow Tom Rinaldi to ask the question, and then this time he will answer it. But once again, let's just summarise. Bloody skin on my face. I'm going to keep doing that. Just one sec. Very dry in here, what can I tell you? Anyway, right. Let's summarise why the heel turn didn't work. It could have been monumental. It was an amazing first chapter at Elimination Chamber when, he hugged, doing hugs and cheering, and then, there was that little rapper guy as well, sit in the middle like a little weasel, ruining everything. And he would ruin WrestleMania as well. But the point is that The Rock pulled out. immediately following that, which gave Cena no proper motivation to turn heel in the first place. He was just then left on an island on his own when it was quite clear that The Rock was the reason for it and he needed to be part of that story or a continuation of that story. So then all Cena had left was to blame the fans for booing me all those years, even though the fans hadn't really booed him in a decade at that point. The whole "let's go Cena, Cena sucks" thing had mostly died out by that point, and he was mostly just cheered. Once again, the execution was an A+, and the follow-up was an I'll do the voice, A minus minus. It was just a Futurama reference, but it's an F minus minus, really. The follow-up, it was absolutely horrendous. And then they just ignored it by SummerSlam. We'll continue on with the points that I won't go into. Cena doesn't like dynasties, for whatever that means. Cena's relationship with The Rock, he doesn't really go into it, but he says it's timeline dependent, whether they got on or not. Rocky relationship, but he did learn excellence from The Rock, and he loves regime, and that's why he believes that he would have done well in the military, and that's why he believes he did well in pro wrestling as well, but the military was his original career trajectory. Now, the best criticism, this was a question, what's the best criticism, or the one that sticks in your head, he received it is, was that the best you can do? And he ends up asking himself that a lot. And he says, well, if it's yes, then he can let it go. He can't do any more. But if it's no, then obviously it's time for introspection. And he also said that the audience feedback meant more than whatever people were telling him in the back. So if the fans were chanting or booing or saying, you can't wrestle, he used to bug him, and he won all the time as well. And at some point he realised that, it took him quite a few years, that the 5 moves of doom weren't cutting it anymore. Not in that era when, the work rate era, I guess you might want to call it, was sort of kicking up, several notches, and the 5 moves of doom, or particularly those 5 moves of doom, weren't cutting it as much as they used to. And then, obviously, fans booing him, and I think what it was is that he didn't want fans to reject him by completely doing a hard reset and saying, right, well, I'm not going to do that 5 moves of doom, I'm going to do 50 different moves, and then do it that way. So basically, he just tried to slowly implement change in his performances and his character to, once again, not betray the original performance, but, evolve from that point. Then there's an interesting portion in the interview where John Cena talks about being shunted down the card, not really, but being shunted down the card somewhat, and then wrestling and winning and losing, and then winning and then losing the US title in 2015, around the 2015-2016 mark. Now, he says very specifically, I did not consider that a demotion. Yes, I was world champion 13 times or whatever it might have been up to that point. But everything is an opportunity. One, it's television time, and it's my television time. So you can do whatever you want with your television time as long as it's good, and then you'll keep getting more. And he obviously had more than enough confidence in his performance to be able to make the most of it, which I guess a lot of people don't have. And then the second one is that around that time, I think he said around 2013, but maybe a tiny bit further on, he started requesting with and started working with a heck of a lot of younger talent, whether it be a Sami Zayn or a Kevin Owens or a Seth Rollins, where Cena said that, yeah, I might have been in the business 15, 16 years on top for the majority of that, but he was looking at those matches as learning sessions from what he could take away from these young guys who, hone their craft in the indies more than anything, or Ring of Honor, and then brought up to WWE later on, where I think a lot of people thought they'd never be brought to WWE. Kevin Owens is a good case in point there. Now, I like that attitude enormously, but what he doesn't say that also should be said as well is like, hey, I was getting paid the same, what did it matter? Now, a few more things to follow up, close up the interview was one, he talks about Make-A-Wish work, which is one of the best bits of the interview, but I encourage you to watch it yourself. He won't be doing a follow-up to his rap album, even though it went platinum, maybe for legal reasons, in fact, because as in a previous video I was talking about the lawsuit, and it's kind of a fishy lawsuit, quite frankly, that someone's trying to claim copyright for a cover of a hook from an older song done on a different instrument that kind of sounds slightly different, whatever. Anyway, watch that video. It only came out a couple of videos ago, Thursday or Friday, whenever, as this one's posted. What's next for Cena? He doesn't know. But then he talked about being run out of the movie business in 2009 by taking, and that's not true, I think it was 2011, by taking crappy straight-to-DVD movies, all from WWE Studios, by the way. So once again, WWE Studios kind of almost kills more careers, or at least it did in the early days, than it did make them, at least in Hollywood. So The Marine, 12 Rounds, legendary, and the one that I think everyone forgets from that era, The Reunion. Shame they didn't talk about blockers after, because Cena was talking about, I got this opportunity with like that Amy Schumer movie with Bill Hader, or on the Flintstones, and every opportunity begats another opportunity, whether he was on the Kids' Choice Awards or whatever, and someone sees him, you'd be good at this like minimal role, you'll be good at this middle of the road role, and then it's a shame once again they didn't talk about blockers, because I always thought, one, that was a really good film. Two, Cena, I'm pretty sure was because it was years ago I saw it, pretty much the best thing in it, and he was really good in it. And it was a good film as well, so, he stood head and shoulders above everyone else, I think, as far as his performance and ability to laugh at himself as well. But also, I think that movie gave him a load of credibility to then get a ton of other offers, from Bumblebee to whatever else it might have been beyond that. Fun fact, as far as the films go, and then I'll end with this, John Cena's first movie role was in David Arquette's Ready to Rumble. So the WCW, that horrendous film. And once again, it was just, I watched it as a kid and just thought it was totally bogus. I didn't even understand what was going on. It was just a bad film, man. And it's a shame, because I really like David Arquette as well. But I've never met him, but he seems like a good dude. John Cena was a backstage extra in, where else? A gym. So there you go. So if you're ever going to, force yourself to rewatch that piece of celluloid, just offensive, reel of nonsense, I guess, I suggest you have a good look at the gym and see if you can spot him. But anyway, I do recommend the John Cena interview with Tom Rinaldi on the WWE YouTube channel. I'll link it in the description, most likely, if nothing else. But once again, give it a watch. It does kind of feel like it was sprung on Cena at the last minute, but I'm sure it wasn't. But he said, right, okay, I'm doing an interview for now, having a sit-down introspection thing, but whatever. He's done a million of these, and he comes across pretty darn well as well. So once again, that's my review. I hope you... God damn, it's nearly 30 minutes, for goodness sake. You might as well just watch the interview, to be honest, if you're going to invest this much time. But there you go, those are my opinions and my sort of comments on it. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you again soon.